Boys and girls, how lucky are we tonight to have a fantastic singer, songwriter, performer. You know him, you know his songs. And I grew up with his music, and I have seen him live many times. This is my good pal, Colin Hay. How are you today, Colin? Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. I'm pretty good. I haven't really spoken yet today, so I'm just trying to still form words into sentences.
Well, you sound good to me. And you know what, Colin, let me just tell you, I'm such a fan. I go back with you to the Men at Work days when I was a kid, but also when I was a student in New York City, I used to go see you at the Bottom Line. I don't know if you remember performing at the club, the Bottom Line in New York City.
Of course I do. Of course I do. It's a famous place. I remember that very well.
I used to love seeing you there. And
there was probably hardly anybody was there either.
Yeah, I used to feel like I was part of an exclusive club of Colin Hay fans because, you know, your crowds were a little slimmer back then, but the music was just fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, I did a few there, and I remember doing a Songwriters in the Round there one night, and with Ron Sexsmith.
Yeah, fabulous Canadian guy. Yeah,
I got served while I was performing at the Bottom Line, a summons. Yeah.
Why?
Oh,
Why?
It was from an old agent that I used to be with when Greg and I toured as Men at Work.
Yeah.
He was annoyed. He was annoyed with us. I think that he hadn't been paid yet. He was gonna get paid, but our management at that time was in Australia, and there was some mix up with the banks. But it was nothing. There was nothing dodgy. There was nothing dodgy going on at all, you know. But he wanted to get his money.
Wow.
So they served me a summons while I was performing.
Shit. I wish I was there. Listen, I'm in South Philly. If you need somebody's legs broken, I know who to call. Okay. Also, I sat next to the actor Chaz Palminteri at one of your shows at the Bottom Line. There were like 10 people at the Bottom Line one of those nights, and it was me and Chaz Palminteri and a bunch of Australian people.
Wow, that's great. I remember he told me something great, you know, Chaz, one time. He said about being an actor, he said, you got to have a 2-hour face.
Yeah.
That's what's important. That's what's important. You know, like a lot of great actors, they don't have a 2-hour face.
Right.
That's very, very important. If you're going to be a successful actor, you got to have a 2-hour face.
Exactly. And you're not going to remember this, Colin, but it meant a lot to me. I actually performed with you. You won't remember, but we did this festival called the Apple Farm Festival in 2014 in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And my band, Low Cut Connie, opened for you. I don't know if you remember that a fist fight broke out in the crowd.
Of course I remember. Of course I remember. That was my Altamont.
That was your Altamont.
They were so hopeless, these old guys trying to fight. I think they were completely rat-faced, and they neither of them could throw a punch. It was just pathetic, you know.
It was sad, yeah, it was.
You know, but I was glad no one got hurt.
It was these old folk people fighting with each other, you know.
Right,
like,
there's nothing more pathetic than old folkies having a fist fight.
Wasn't it Bob Dylan who said folk music is old fat people? Wasn't that? I think that was Dylan.
I don't know.
Also, I spoke to you backstage that day, and I told you that you and I have the same eye disease.
Oh.
We both got the same fucked up eye. Which
one's yours?
Mine's the left.
Yeah, mine's the right. So we could just walk past each other and not even see each other.
Well, I used to see you on MTV when I was a kid with your lazy eye and in all your videos, and you looked, you know, fantastic. It was like just, who is this guy? What is the music? It was a time when people could look strange on television, and that was a good thing. And I just want to thank you for being out there with your lazy eye on TV, because it gave me hope for my career.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to be able to be who you are and just be. I mean, I think it's getting even better. You know, there's a lot of people who are not feeling any shame in in being who they are and standing on a screen or standing on a stage and doing what they do. I think more power to everybody who's different in some way, you know, because I think that for so long, and it's still going on, of course, you know, but oppression takes all forms,
Yeah.
and none of it's any good, you know.
Absolutely. And you named your record label Lazy Eye, isn't that right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I want to ask you some questions about some Old Men at Work songs before we talk about your solo career, which I love. Uh, a lot of your best songs seem to have anxiety and tension in the margins. When I think of Overkill, when I think of It's a Mistake, when I think of Who Can It Be Now, it's funny to me that such a young man could write these songs, because they seem like they're written from the perspective of a person who's seen a lot and dealt with a lot of adversity and perhaps some mental illness. What was going on with you back then? Where did those songs come from?
Well, specifically, I think that It's a Mistake was of course inspired by Kubrick's Doctor Strangelove, and the idea that we have the power to obliterate everyone on the planet. And at that time, the Cold War was at its height. And so I was suffering, quite a lot of fear and trepidation. Ronald Reagan was in power, and we in Australia, we were quite frightened of him and what was going on in the Soviet Union, which was also, quite aggressive geographically, and so that was where that came from, was the fact that there could indeed be an ultimate and horrendous mistake made by people, and I think that was very much a reality.
That song always reminded me of Ray Davies, the Kinks. He had a song called Some Mother's Son on the Arthur record, where he was writing 20 years before you about very similar topics.
Well, he's a brilliant guy, and he was a great hero of mine, still is, fantastic writer and fantastic wit. And I've never met him, but he's all his songs also. I mean, the thing about the Kinks and his writing was they could write great hits, but he was so learned and so literate, incredible writer. But the others, I don't know, Overkill was more about, I realized at that particular time that nothing was going to be the same anymore. We were becoming quite famous, and so the streets you walk down, people you see, everything, and anonymity is no longer an option, and so it's like an unknown world. It's like you have to dive into this deep pool of the unknown. So you either do that or you don't. So that's kind of, I think, anyway, just looking back on it, that was partly what was going on with that song, and just going and embracing the fact that, okay, here we go. This is what I wanted, and now I have the possibility of having it.
Yeah.
And there's a certain amount of anxiety that goes along with that. Also, I think that that was the beginnings for me of a kind of a years long battle with realizing, before anyone else ever mentioned to me anything about my proclivity for drinking, was that I loved to drink, and I loved it too much. So I kind of knew that I had a problem pretty early on. And so that was becoming a struggle of just how to negotiate that. I was still of a mind that I could like a lot of alcoholics have, that I could deal with it, that I could actually handle it.
Yeah.
And so it took me a number of years, to realize that I couldn't, in fact. And so I think that's also a bit of that in that song as well. So, but I don't know about the. Sometimes you write songs and you're not really even. I think a lot of the time I wasn't very confident about the songwriting. I mean, I'd been doing it for quite a long time, but I think that's possibly why some things were kind of shrouded in some kind of humor.
Yes.
Try and because I think that even Down Under, for example, is quite a heavy song, although it's not recognized as that. You know, it's seen as being like a beer drinking song or a
Right.
flag waving song. You know, but
It's
it's really
dark.
about
It's dark.
yeah, yeah. So yeah.
I mean, the 80s, we think of so many songs in the 80s are about girls, cars, materialism, trying to get rich, trying to get laid, just all these things that we saw in the 80s. But your songs, just like Ray Davies, who is another hero of mine, were wry. They were full of humor. They were dark. And it's just amazing when a song like Overkill, that is so dark, can become such a massive hit. And for some reason, that song has had like 9 lives, and it just seems
Yeah.
to grow in stature over the years. Do you still find new things in that song and your old material to relate to when you perform now?
Yeah, I think that they live inside you, don't they? The songs, and so every time you perform them, you're they're being reborn in a way. So they come out differently because you're feeling. There's a couple of ways to look at it. You know, I usually try and I guess it's a form of trickery where when you're performing songs you perform for 40 years. You know, you have to find a way of giving them free rein so that you can almost discover them yourself when you're performing them, instead of going, oh, you know, I've got to sing this song again. I've been playing it for 40 years. You know, you're kind of putting yourself in the middle of it and saying, oh well, okay, I'm performing the song, as opposed to just being the messenger, if you like, being the person where the song comes through. So if you take yourself out of that equation, I find it more fun in a way, and you can discover things about the song more because you give it its due. You know, you just give it free rein.
Colin, was Bob Marley a big influence on you too? I mean, I hear a lot of reggae in your early music. Was reggae a lot of your listening when you were young?
Yeah, well, Bob Marley was very big in Australia, and the whole reggae movement was really big. And I loved the space in the songs. I loved playing on the offbeat, and you know, I loved his whole sense of of who he was. He was so brilliant and so confident and so political and melodic. You know, he had so much. You know, he had everything really. And except he wouldn't go to the doctor to get his foot looked at. God damn it, Bob! Come on.
Bob Marley is, you know, it's soul music, and when I say soul music, I mean small s. Soul music. We play and feature music on this program, Tough Cookies, that moves me, that touches my heart, and it could be country music, it could be rock and roll, it could be hip hop, it could be folk, whatever it is. But if it moves my heart, if it reaches your heart rather than tries to be clever or progressive or part of some fad in the music business, to me that's soul music. And a lot of the songs you write to me are very soulful. And I wanted to ask you about one of your evergreen songs from your solo career, Waiting for My Real Life to Begin. Without being a radio hit, it's another kind of hit in your career. It's a song that continues to resonate with people. Where were you in life when that song came to you? What were you doing?
I was sitting at home here, and I wasn't exactly in this spot, but I was upstairs, and I was working with a friend of mine called Tom Mooney, a drummer. And we were just working on some songs and some ideas, and he would come around to my house And this day he came round, and I said to him, how you doing, Tom? You know, and he goes, well, you know, man, he said, I'm just waiting for my real life to begin. And he said that line, and that's all he did, really. He just said the line, and then I went, oh, and I just sat down and I wrote it all out. It came in one kind of burst. The lyrics did, and the music kind of followed along. But it was one of those things where he just opened this door, you know, and there it was. The title of the song kind of opened the door to the tune. It doesn't happen that often, but I think there's something great about having a title, you know, first, to go, okay, go from that. Sometimes you don't, but it's often very beneficial to have a title first. And also I was sitting around my house. It was 1993, and I'd just been dropped by MCA Records a couple of years before, and I was still under the illusion that people were going to come looking for me, you know,
right.
Give me deals and to tell me that I'm fabulous, you know. And of course nobody did. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to do anything with the rest of my life, well, starting today, then I have to leave the house and go out and go to places like you mentioned, the Bottom Line, and play shows to practically nobody.
Yeah.
And go out and find my audience, and, you know, grab them by the scruff of the neck and say, you know, right, come on, you're coming with me. and so that's where I was at that particular time.
It's like the beginning of your stand-up comedy career, because it's like, you know, you go back on the club circuit. You're back in the grits and the grime, and according to the fabulous documentary that I watched recently about you waiting for my real life, there were some performances where nobody showed up, right?
Yeah, there was one in particular. Yeah, and I still thought I had to perform, which was weird. You know, my tour manager said, you know, you don't have to play, man. You don't have to play. And so I think
it did get you back to your craft, though. It got you back to, you know, the like when I've seen you perform solo, your stage banter, your rhythm, your set list, your vocals, it's all you need. We're completely drawn into what you're doing, in the same way that a 10-piece band could command your attention. And it seems to me that you always had the songwriting chops, you always had the humor, but it seems to me in those club years, you really refined something in your stage craft. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I think there was a few things that happened. I think that the fact that the audiences were so small, like you said before, there is something conspiratorial about that, yeah. where you're conspiring with the audience, because they know what you've been through, and I know what they've been through.
Yeah.
And you don't even really have to talk about it. But the fact of the matter is, they knew that I'd been to the top.
Yeah.
And they also know where I am now, because they're sitting there. So you don't have to explain that. And also, I know where they are, because I think to myself, well, you've had stuff go on in your life, and you're sitting here, and we're just, so there's that's the connection. And so that's where you start from. You know, that's where you spring from. You spring from going, okay, we're connected because we're people. And we're thinking to ourselves on a daily basis, what the fuck is this all about? You know, just being alive, you know?
Yeah.
And so you go from there, and then what you discover is, you think, well, okay, I'll try this. I'll try this on, you know, and see if this works, you know, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But because you're just doing shows and you're doing lots of them, it's not an intellectual process. It's not an academic process. It's just it's a thing of going, okay, well, I'll play to my strengths, you know. And then, you know, some things happened which were interesting, I think. Like when my father died in 2009, he was a great unfulfilled. I mean, he was fulfilled. You know, he was a great talented guy, but it was unfulfilled. You know, he didn't follow that. He didn't follow that dream in a way. You know, he became something else, family man, and he was a piano tuner. But he was a brilliant singer, great dancer, and he was very funny and very charming. And he could write rhymes, you know, and he would, you know, I would go home and he'd turn around and he'd go, "Hey, do you know that guy Snoopy Dogg? Do you know that guy Snoopy Dogg?" And I go, "He's good, that guy. I like him, you know." And then he would write a little rhyme because he'd been inspired by Snoop, you know. So when he died, it was like he inhabited me, you know. He went from being a physical presence to being somebody who I couldn't talk to him, you know, literally anymore. So I thought, well, okay, I'll still talk to you, and the way I'll do that is he seemed to just inhabit my heart, my whole being, and I started to perform like it was two people. So in a way, it became, I kind of had this idea of, not something which was an intellectual idea, but I just had this idea of theatre performance, of being, whether it's vaudeville, whatever it is, you're there and you're, you know, you're kind of using everything you have and everything that's been before,
right?
You know, and you're bringing it up to the present, and you're going, well, okay, this is what I got.
It reminds me of Steve Martin has this fabulous book called Born Standing Up that's all about his early stand-up career. And he wanted to be a magician, and he wanted to be a banjo player, and he wanted to be an impressionist, and he wanted to be, you know, all these things. And he was bombing and bombing and bombing and bombing and bombing. And then he figured out, you know what, I'm going to go out on stage with all my thing. I'm going to take the banjo.
Right. Everything. Yeah.
And then he
play to all your strengths.
Yeah.
All play to all your weaknesses, if you want to look at it like that.
Yeah. And if I can't get him with this thing, I'll get him with that thing. And he says towards the end of the book that after his first appearance on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, Johnny invites him to the couch, which was like, you made it, kid. And he leaned over and he said, "Stephen, use everything you know and you'll never fail," you know. So it has been amazing as a fan of yours to watch you grow and to watch your skills and your craft grow. I wanted to ask you, you became a United States citizen 4 years ago. And I'm projecting, but you're going to tell me if I'm correct. I was just thinking, because I know that you and I share a certain concern about our culture and the future of our country and our world. I was just thinking that perhaps you had a desire to vote in the 2016 election, and maybe that was part of the reason. Am I wrong?
Not totally wrong. There's a number of things. I mean, I've been here for a long time, and I have a great love I have a great love of all the countries that I've been fortunate enough to have lived in. You know, I mean, I was born in Scotland, which is a great place, and I love it dearly. And then we emigrated to Australia, and that was incredible as well, and became a citizen of Australia. And then I came over here, and I was always kind of, it wasn't like a master plan. Okay, I want to become an American person. But I'd been here for so long, and you know, there were kind of, dare I say, boring reasons for it, technical reasons, being married, and you know, if I fall off my perch, then there's taxation ramifications and all that kind of stuff, which are probably not worth going into. But that was also a consideration. Somebody said, "Hey, listen, you know, you should consider this." And also, Barack Obama was still in power, and I wanted to become a citizen under his watch, because I'm a great admirer of his, especially even more so now. But and I thought to myself, well, I just have to, I have to be a part, be a a voting part of the place that I've chosen to live,
Right.
because it's been very kind to me, the United States of America, and and I believe in the promise of America, which I think is still yet to be realized by everybody who lives here. So it's all that, and more. But I'm happy that I did it for many different reasons, because I've been living here for 30 years, and so I'm, I'm committed.
What's it like when you go back to Australia to tour? I know you did so just a few years ago with your last record. What's the reception like when you go to Australia? I've never had the pleasure of seeing you in Australia. I wish I could. What's it like? Well, how are the shows different there?
Well, they're not really that different, because I think that in Australia, our old band was so huge on a global level that I think in many ways, there's a lot of people in Australia never really got the band, and they never really gave it credit, really, because a lot of people kind of considered, because of the Down Under song, a lot of people got annoyed by it, because of the fact they thought it was perpetuating the stereotypical yob traveling overseas and so forth. But there's a lot of deeper things connected with the song. But I think there was still this kind of, people didn't really realize how massive we had been. So I wasn't going to try and convince them. I just was kind of sitting in Australia thinking, well, okay, well, what else can I do now? And there wasn't really anything that I thought I could, at that particular time, in the late 80s, people weren't really interested in anything that I was doing. It was like, okay, well, you go back and sit in your wee box, and every now and again we'll drag you out to sing that song, and it didn't seem particularly appealing to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I left to come here to be, and in a way, the anonymity of coming here was great. I could come here. I had the opportunity to come here because not many people do that. Mm-hmm. And so I just came here for a little while to California. And of course, at that time I was trying to get off the drink, and it was just very, it was like a weight got taken off. I didn't have my beautiful old, but drug-addled and alcoholic friends to deal with. Mm. And I could just start again. I could wipe the slate clean. But when I go back to Australia, there's a lot of love there for me, because I think I can go back there and feel safe now. I don't feel, I don't go back there now and think, okay, I'm going to drink again or anything like that. Mm. But I go back and I play to audiences who are much the same as the audiences here. It's about the same number. It's not really that different. It's not like people go, you have this kind of legendary status or anything, but it's a beautiful thing, because like when I play here, when I go back there and play, people also understand the road you've traveled, and they've traveled it as well. So there's a beautiful thing about going back to Australia and playing, especially going back to Melbourne, where I lived for so long, and I still have a little place there, Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can really, it's like going back to Scotland as well and playing. You can really, it's like playing a home game. Yeah.
Well, we're glad to have you. We'll share you, but we're glad to have you and your craft and your artistry. And I hope we get 20 more Colin Hay records, and I hope I get to see you in concert 50 more times.
Yeah, I have a bunch of new songs, of course, by the caused by the pandemic, the quarantine situation. But I was just there's this, I was listening to your record yesterday, and 17 songs on your new record.
Yeah, man.
Is that because of the pandemic? You've been writing a lot, or do you always have a lot of songs on your records?
I'm one of these people that's always walking around with 97 songs in my pocket, and if 10% of them are good, then that's good.
The last one was my favorite too. The Stay As Long As You Like. I like that one.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. In some ways, it's a song that is in the vein of "You're Waiting for My Real Life to Begin," because I wrote that song realizing that I don't have any answers. When we're young and we write, we like to make big declarative statements about the way
Yeah,
the world is. You know.
yeah. Well, I'll tell you something that I find interesting. I have the first drummer in my band, Peter May was his name. He's gone now. He died a couple of years ago. And he technically died twice before he did actually die. He technically died a couple of times. He was in a coma for 9 days, and he came out of that coma, and it happened to him twice. And he told me a lot of things about that experience, where he actually did die. He flatlined and everything. And he said he remembers going towards the light, and he remembers coming back, making a conscious decision to come back. But one of the things he told me was, he said that one of the great reliefs about when he did come back and he was again living upon the earth, he said there was a great realization that answers were not important.
Yeah.
That and he said it was a great relief knowing that there are certain things that are unknowable, and there's a certain majesty and beauty about just different layers being revealed to you. Every time you think you know something, and something else is revealed, and you go, oh, but there's this, for example. Oh, is it one universe? Is it a multi-universe? Is it,
right?
Everything keeps being revealed, and there's something really wondrous about that, And I just always remember him saying that it's okay to not have the answers.
Yeah, last week on this show, Tough Cookie.
That doesn't excuse you from not looking, though.
Of course. I had Joan Osborne on the show last week.
Yeah.
And my friend Eric Bazillion, who wrote her song, What If God Was One of Us?
Oh, what a great song that is.
And we talked about this exact thing, because that song is one long question. There's never any answers to any of the questions.
Yeah.
If God had a name, what would it be, right? If God had a face, what would it look like? And it's just question, 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 question. And he talked about teaching himself to leave the song alone, not trying to come up with the punchline that would sort of bring it home and answer the question. And that is part of being a writer, I guess, is knowing when to leave something alone, right?
Yeah. Well, I think we've all got Bob Dylan to thank for that, at the end of the day. I think even that last song he came out with, Midnight One Night, a few weeks ago.
Yes.
A Murder Most Foul.
Yes.
I listened to that and I just thought to myself, my God, in 1965, he was the guy.
Yeah.
And then I thought to myself, in 2020, he's still the fucking guy.
I know. That record is great.
Fuck, man, is that fair or what? I know
there's a song on that record called I've Decided to Give Myself to You. And it's, people don't talk about his love songs enough. If he only wrote love songs, that would have been enough.
Exactly. Right.
But I just couldn't believe at age 79 that he wrote one of the most beautiful love songs I've ever heard.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And it shows a dedication to the journey, to the craft, to continuing to ask the questions, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And what's also magic about it is that I'm not quite sure how he recorded it. I've heard a few stories about how he recorded it with his band and stuff, but it's like there's so much musical freedom within the song, but it's corralled in a way that's just, it's beautiful. It's so brilliant because like it's free, but it's contained. He always brings it back, so there's kind of like, there's a safety in it as well, because that it's not going to get away from you. But it's almost like if you're traveling, you know, you could go down any road. You could go down any road off the main road and discover what's down there, and you'd be okay. But you can always come back to the main road if you want. You know, there's something really magical about that. The first time I listened to it, I was so blown away by it. You know, I didn't want it to stop. You know,
it's so audacious. You know, it's like,
yeah.
How many minutes? Is it 17 minutes that Murder Most
exactly.
Foul?
Yeah, for 17 minutes. You know? And you could have gone on for another 17 minutes, and you wouldn't have minded.
It's he's a prophet in a way. Listen, Colin, you've been very generous with your time. It's been fantastic talking with you. I just hope we get to hear more music from you soon. The next time you're in Philly, we're going to hang. I'll take you for a cheesesteak down the street. When I'm in LA, I hope to see you at the Largo or wherever the hell you're hanging out.
Okay.
And just keep in touch, my pal. Stay healthy, stay strong, keep writing. Love you, pal.
All right. See you later.
Take care.
Bye-bye.